quick introduction to all and some quick housekeeping before we let Richard have the floor. Rick Palea, I lead our customer segment here at SmartSuite. Appreciate y'all joining today. I see that we have an international crowd again. Richard has a heap of interesting things to share today. So there'll be no shortage of material. The interesting thing about this session in particular is on the clock, maybe 40 days in using SmartSuite, Richard, would you say?
Yeah, if you counted like from when we started to where we are now, only probably about half of that time was actually spent building in SmartSuite. So maybe 20 days of actual build time.
Yeah. So you'll see why that's so impressive in just a moment here, folks. 20 days of build time actually in SmartSuite and creating and innovating. Yet this session will also be for the intermediate and the advanced users of SmartSuite. I can guarantee if you tune in closely here, you'll pick up a whole bunch of ideas on how you can push what you're doing in SmartSuite to new bounds. And that's why we're so excited to have Richard Matthews with us today. Richard, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, so I guess by way of just quick introduction, name's Richard Matthews. I'm the founder of a company called Pushbutton Podcasts. And what we do is, this will be relevant just so you know, because of the processes we're building, what we do is we help lots and lots of companies use a podcast to build all of their content marketing engine for their business. And so the podcast gets turned into YouTube videos, it gets turned into audio podcasts, it gets turned into blog posts, it gets turned into social media content all over the place. And I just figured this out because once we moved everything to SmartSuite, I actually have numbers now of like how much content we produced. We've published a little over 30,000 pieces of content for our clients over the last couple of years. So we do a real high volume of content creation, and we have to have a system to manage all of that. And our move over to SmartSuite, like I said, it was about 40 days ago when we switched, and we switched from another very well-known project management system. I'll keep nameless at the moment. And we were having some problems over there with just basic project management features not working well. And so when we moved over to SmartSuite, we used that opportunity as a way to really just innovate on our operational side to try and fix any of the problems that our team was having and make their processes as simple and easy as possible. And then we started this build out in SmartSuite and realized that we could really push the bounds with this system because it's so very flexible compared to almost any of the other platforms we'd been on before. And we have, what I'm going to show you is just the sort of basic build out of our main operator for the system that we've published 30,000 pieces of content with, and how SmartSuite has allowed us to roughly cut our labor costs to make all of that happen anywhere from 30 to 50%, which bottom line for our business means anywhere from about $4,000 to $8,000 every 2 weeks in labor costs. It's quite exciting for us. It'll improve our bottom line, and that's why Rick actually invited us to come on here, because we showed him what we were up to, and he's like, "You guys need to you need to show what you're working on to everyone." With that, is there any other introduction stuff before I share the screen and get into it? You are muted, Rick.
Unmute, yeah. So the context of you is super interesting as well, and I think that's part of why everything you're doing is so impressive. So I'd love for you to just share kind of the story, even just a few minutes of you, your family, what you do.
Oh yeah, sure.
Grab life by the horn, so to speak.
You're actually, if you were seeing the video here, I'm in the back bedroom of an RV, right? So if you like turn it this way, there's like a bathroom over there and like closet and the bedroom's behind me. And this is a backdrop that's in my back bedroom of my RV. We travel full time. We're coming up on our 7th year of traveling full time with our family. I got 4 kids in here, 2 ferrets. I actually currently have 7 kids in here because we got friends visiting. So I got 7 kids in the background over here right now. And we run our company 100% virtual. So I got 18 staff members all over the world. We got several here in Florida. We got staff members in the Philippines. We got staff members in Mexico. And so we build and run the company virtually. We do a lot of crazy stuff, really. We homeschool the kids. We've been to all 48 states in the lower US. We're working on selling the RV and moving into a sailboat and continuing to build our life and our business that way. And it is only a matter of all of the technology we have access to that allows us to do all of that today. So things like tools like SmartSuite and tools like Zoom and tools like the 5G internet that allows us to run a completely virtual company. And we've been doing it since before it was cool. It started being cool in COVID, but we've been doing it since 2017. So anyways, that's, I guess, some context about me.
That's great. Yeah. I think the fact that you're able to do what you do and be on the move, and we'll have people here that are aspiring to have lifestyle businesses, just things that they want to set up as a steady source of income and have flowing. This is a perfect session for you. We also have people here that are looking to push the bounds for the companies they work for and continue to acquire and attract. And that's something I want to make sure that you're also able to touch on, which is your plans to take over the world, so to speak.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and I'm going to do my share screen here, and I want to share my main desktop. I got 3 desktops here, put you guys over here. So just so if you see me looking over here, I'm looking at a second display. That's what's going on. And I want to talk about just from the very beginning, there is high level, the way I think about systems in general, because that'll be helpful for understanding this whole session. And so that it's that there's 3 pieces that make what I call a push button system. And the idea is that when I want to be able to push a button and have things happen and have an outcome reached. And so the push button system is going to require 3 things. It's going to require a database. It's going to require an automation platform, triggers and actions, and it's going to require intelligence. And then intelligence can be nowadays either human intelligence or artificial intelligence. And I think a lot of people are familiar with ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and a lot of the other ones. But for a process, the process for me not to be the one doing it as the founder of my company, I need to have those 3 things in place: a database, triggers and actions, some sort of automation platform, and intelligence, whether that's human or artificial. And so when we're talking business systems and you have humans that are a part of it, the term I use for that is human in the loop. Right. So you have human in the loop of the automation where people are going to actually be involved in the process of building things. And so I'm going to SmartSuite in all of our systems takes the place of two of those things, right? One of them is the database, and the database structures that you're capable of building a SmartSuite are just wonderful. And then it also has at least part of the automation platforms. So the automation platform on SmartSuite is very good, and it for a lot of the things that are internal to the database, you can build a lot of things with the automation platform. And then we use a secondary automation platform to supplement where SmartSuite doesn't have the features that we want or doesn't have the sort of the complexity that we need for what we're building. And we're going to use Naten or N8N for supplemental automations. And so I've got that pulled up over here. We'll show you some of the workflows in there. And one of the best parts about SmartSuite is that we can actually interact with external automation platforms very easily because of the triggers and the buttons and whatnot that they give us. The URL formula field in particular lets us send data out to other automation platforms, and then the incredible API documentation allows us to get data back and forth between those systems. And then, of course, SmartSuite, because they also build in the project management pieces to the database, allows us to have both of the human intelligence be a part of our processes as well. So from a high level, does that make sense? Sweet. What I want to dive in and show you is a couple of different systems we have built in here. So I'm going to show you our main operating system for all of our service delivery is this Deliver Amazing Service. I believe you guys call them solutions. Is that correct? So the solution we have here, and the solution is pretty simple. We got a whole bunch of views on the left-hand side. But what's most important for here is I'm just going to give you a brief tour on what we're doing here. So for us, I mentioned we're a podcast post-production company. So we have 2 different things that are really important for all of our delivery. We have all the shows that we service. And so we have our show records. I'll go ahead and pull up my show record for our internal show, which is the Hero Show. And this show record has a lot of just relevant information for that show. So we've got things like title, status, a show code. It's the Hero Show. It's the initials of our show. We have the link to the Google Drive file for that show. Our published date, whether or not we have any particular publishing notes. We don't have a lot of this filled out for my own show because our team just knows all our stuff really well. But primary contacts for the show. Do they like Google Chat? If they have Google Chat, we chat with them there. Show host name, co-host name if they have them. Links to the primary contact, secondary contact, and the company. And those all go to our CRM databases. So if I pull this up, it'll pull up my information on the CRM portion. Same thing with the company, pulls up the link in the CRM database as well. And then all of this is really useful because it allows us to, I believe they're called the lookup fields. I can use the lookup fields to pull linked data into this record and then act on it in the future. So then we also do things like we set our team assignments for this particular show. So you can see our show manager, graphic designer, onboarding manager, video editor, post-production scheduling, writer, file manager, all assigned to the show. And this will be important for some of the automations later because we have episodes coming in for this show. And when an episode comes in, we need to assign these particular people to that episode. And so there's some automations that allow us to do that. It's really flexible for that. If we have any one-time tasks, finances for the show, so things like our onboarding fee, monthly fees, affiliate fees, revenue. If we have commissions for our sales guys, links to our WooCommerce subscriptions for that, what their start date was. And a lot of that stuff, again, allows us to build dashboards that we can see for all of our shows that are in status active. What's our recurring revenue that's on it? What's the commissions that we owe regularly? We can track all of that in our dashboards because we're tracking the finance data on the active show records. And then we have linked records. So we're keeping track of things like client notes and meetings. Anytime we meet with a client, we have a record for those meetings with the recordings on there. If we have commissions going to a sales guy, every single commission invoice is attached to the show, so we can do math on like how much the sales guy is making from particular shows. And we do recurring commissions with our sales guys because it helps build a long-term relationship with them. And all of our sales guys are actually podcast coaches as well. So they're helping our clients with long-term, relationships. And then every single episode that's associated with this show on the episodes table, which we'll get to in just a minute. And then if we have discovery calls with them, and then any particular tasks from our task records on our company tasks that are assigned to this show in particular. So there are lots of linked records. And then we were talking about before the lookup fields. These are lookup fields that we're pulling from all of our related all of the attached records. So we got first name, last name, my primary contact email, the show record ID for this show, so we can use that record ID to pull automations. You'll see that in a minute. And then Google Drive folder IDs, so we can take actions inside of Google Drive. Again, we'll show you that in a minute. New episodes folder, Squadcast stuff, and then styles for the written style for the show, because we're going to get into how we actually do some of our written assets automatically with the show records by putting in styles and whatnot for our prompts with AI, because we interact with AI very extensively through here. So that's the first major record is in there. And then the second one is the episodes. And so the episodes are all broken out by our clients. And some of the best stuff that's happening in here is all of this is automatic. When a client records an episode, it automatically comes into this system. And I'll show you how we do that in just a minute. But a lot of it is using a lot of the records that we just showed, right? The show record, it's pulling in the Google Drive file ID, it's pulling in the show record ID, it's pulling in the next episode number, and it's automatically writing a show title. So this one here from our Founding Partners podcast came in yesterday, and the record automatically came into the system with the show code, the episode number, and the title for the podcast. And it came in with the Google Drive link already created, came in with the Descript link already created, and some other tasks and whatnot. So we'll show you some of these, but this is what we're doing to manage the actual episode. And so every single one of our episode records has the same type of stuff. So this is the episode is going to have like our basics, the title, time tracking logs, status, like who it's going to go for, the published date and time when it's due for our team. And I think one of the most important things is for our team, we're in the process of building, this isn't all done, but every single field has an SOP that goes with it using the description thing. So the episode identifier SOP, if you pop this open, it'll actually open up into another SmartSuite record. I would like to have a link option that let me do the little popover thing when I put in a HTTP link, but it'll pull up the record, and we have training and usage guide SOPs that walk through, hey, here's what an identifier looks like, here's how you should use it, here's how it ties in with our purpose and values for our companies, step by step on how to write a good episode identifier, all the way through with good examples, bad examples, and if we have them, frequently asked questions on that. And if there's links to SOPs, to other SOPs, they'll be linked in here as well. And at some point, I haven't done this yet because I haven't got my designer to play with it, is we'll actually turn these SOPs into PDFs as well. And so that using the cool document designer feature that is available, my designer can pop in and actually make a PDF version of every SOP. And they just have a quick link to pop that open in there. And that is true for every single field on here. How to use the time tracking field, how to use the episode status field, how to use the due date field, how to use the published date field. So every field on there has an associated SOP, and you'll see that all the way through. Show manager SOP episode has guest SOP, the episode number SOP, the record age SOP, like every single field has an SOP associated with it. One of the reasons why we're doing it on a per field basis rather than a per record basis is because we're regularly upgrading what we have in the record, and having it piecemeal like that allows us to make changes to the record and make changes to where the SOPs are located, so our staff can immediately come into a record and see exactly what they need to see to get in and do that. So high level, hopefully that makes sense so far. We got a lot of stuff that's going on in here, but what I want to, before I get too far away from this and get into some of the automations, does the structure make sense from this high level on this thing, just showing how you can connect everything together and get data?
Absolutely. Folks, down at the bottom in Zoom, I'm a big proponent of the reactions. Yeah, there we go. I see some thumbs up flying in. Just to show Richard tuned in. You're loving what he's showing. Feel free to react as you see fit.
Yeah.
But that's great.
So I want to get in and actually show you some of the automations and whatnot that make this possible. So we have a new episode record here that I just popped in. This new episode record is using innate which is over here, and we have a couple of workflows where a new record in SmartSuite from Squadcast recording. And so Squadcast is where all of our clients record. And what's happening in this automation is whenever we get a webhook in from a recording session, actually I can probably go to executions and show you one with actual data on it. So new episode comes in and we get the show ID and we get the show name from Squadcast. And so if you remember back in SmartSuite on our show records, if we go over to shows and open up any one of these shows, again, that one was from Classrooms to Courtrooms. So see if I can pull that one open for you. I say that, and then I can't figure out where I put it. There we go, Classrooms to Courtrooms. I should learn to use the search feature that's in there. That'd be useful. On our lookup fields, we have the show record ID, or the Squadcast show ID is right here. So what that allows us to do inside of our automation platform then is to look up the show. And we're using, again, this is SmartSuite's API, which if you're not familiar with this, it's one of the best parts of SmartSuite. You click on the little drop down here and you click Solution API. And this is the thing, I go nuts over this every time I see it because I can't believe you guys do this. It is literally the best thing in the market. And I can go down to the show record and find out exactly every single piece of our record is built in here with explanation of how to use it in the AI or in the API. And so the Squadcast session ID is somewhere down here. I usually use there we go, Squadcast show ID. There's the value for it. It's a string. Here's how it's put into the API. And I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know how to use APIs. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. Who does? ChatGPT. ChatGPT knows how to do all of this stuff. And what I'll do is I'll just come into this thing and take this show records up at the top. And then, okay, here's the API for it. And there's some stuff on authentication, and you can copy this stuff on authentication. And I just copy all of this stuff that's in here, and I give it to ChatGPT and be like, hey, I'm using innate to do this, and I want to make an HTTP request. Can you help me write it? And it'll write it for you. And one of the best parts about that is you can come into the actual editor, and you can copy and paste and download download the whole workflow and just upload the whole workflow and be like, hey, can you just write me the whatever you call this, the node on Naton. And so ChatGPT writes all this stuff. I'm not some fancy coder who knows how to do any of this stuff. I'm just leveraging the intelligence and tools we have available to make this happen. So we're looking up the show record, and once we find it, we are creating the record in the episodes table. And the create record in the episodes table is because we pulled the show by ID. The show has all sorts of fields. And one of the fields that's on the show is the next episode number. So if we pull up that Classrooms to Courtrooms and we go down to those lookup fields, we have our next episode number, which is a formula field. And the formula field is doing math. It's do a record sort. And again, I don't know how to write any of this stuff. I just took your guys' wonderful database of all your formula records and I gave it to ChatGPT and I was like, hey, can you tell me how to write a formula that would do this for me? And I wanted to get the next episode number. And so what it's doing is it's looking at the linked record episodes and it's looking at the episode record and it's finding the last one, whatever the last episode number is. And then it's just sorting them by descending and adding one to it. And what that's doing is it's giving us the next episode number. So that means the last one we have from this show is episode 50. So it's making an episode 51 number for us that we can use inside of our automation to create the new record. And so we pull the show code, we pull the episode number, and then we use some AI stuff to write a title for it. And we run all of that through, merge it all together, and we put it into SmartSuite. And so we have a couple other steps that are going on here just to make our life a little bit easier. But if the Google Drive link is empty, if we don't actually have a Google Drive field on that episode, then it's actually going to go through and create all of the Google Drive folders for that episode as well. And so it creates all the folders for it. And then it transcribes and makes a short description of the episode as well and puts all of that back into SmartSuite for us. And so when we get a new episode record, what we're getting, let me go down to the Hero Show, and from one of these later episodes that we just did, the episode will come in and it'll come in with let me go down to written assets. It'll come in with the show. That one was before I built that in. Let me see if I can go a little bit farther down, written assets data. There we go. It'll come across with a short description of the episode already written by AI. And so that gets published or it gets directly in there. So the episode's coming in with our show code, episode number, title, and a short description. And then we're using all of that inside of our automations inside of SmartSuite to do a couple of other things. So one of them is a new record notification. And the new record notification is just a way to let our clients know that we got their recording really quickly. And so it comes through when a new episode comes in, a new record is created by that other automation, by this automation. It sends an email to our client that says, hey, we're using that primary contact lookup field, and say your show manager has been notified. Our system has tagged this episode with whatever the identifier is. And then here's some quick links for all of them. Your show manager's email, your show manager's phone number, your chat with us in Google Chat. That's why we had that record in the Google Chat, so we could send it quickly to our clients. And then we're using the fill out form update links from your guys' really cool integration with fill out form to take a new episode, and when they get the episode, they can click the link and they can give us, if they had a guest information, bio, that kind of stuff very quickly that updates right onto the record. And so what I want to stress on all of this is what the process now, what happens is our client is recording in Squadcast. And when they're done recording, they hit the stop record button, right? That's the whole Pushbutton Podcast's promise, is they push stop record. And seconds later, we have in our SmartSuite record, we have the new episode tagged properly with the right number, associated with the right show, and a Google Drive link has been created. The files have been moved over automatically to Google Drive from Squadcast. We've got a short description that was written automatically, and the client was notified in an email with all the appropriate links and an update link field that lets them put in whatever information they have that shows up in their email literally seconds after they finish recording. And our show manager is getting a notification. The show manager that's associated with the show record, by the way, because it's different for all of our shows, is getting the notification for a new episode that came in for their client. And so the first experience someone has with our business now is when they record an episode, all of that happens very quickly. And then it also is updating the Google Chat with us with the notification for the new episode. And so it's just a very impressive sort of thing. I haven't updated this yet, but we're going to take that short description and be like, hey, here's the episode identifier, and here's what you talked about on the episode, and have the short description like automatically put into the thing. I don't know if we trust it well enough yet to start sending it to clients, because we're still reviewing the written stuff. But that is high level. It's a really complex process that is enabled because of all of the show database tables that we're building in there, and all the automations that are capable of happening in there. So that's the first big process I wanted to go over, was how episodes get in there. I got a lot of other cool things we can get into, but that's just one process that we're doing. And that process by itself was anywhere from 2 to 3 days worth of work that now happens in seconds. And it had 3 or 4 people that were involved in that process before. And so that process all by itself pays for our entire SmartSuite installation for our entire team, just from the labor cost savings. Before we get into any of the other stuff I'm going to show you today.
Tremendous. Yeah, and if I could demystify, I know there's some commentary here. There's a lot of wows. Folks are impressed in the depth in which you've gone to set this up and leveraging the SmartSuite features to the fullest. There's a question here from Tiffany around how long did it take to actually set this up?
I said we're about 20 days of build time to do everything that I'm about to show you. That particular process took most of the time was in figuring out how we wanted to set up the databases to have the right fields and where they needed to go. And so there's a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, what are the pieces that we need in order to get the right data that we want to have? Where do we want to have the data? And so that was where most of the time, that's what they call database design. And again, I'm not a good database designer. Who is? ChatGPT.
Look, if you could speak more to that point too, because it's one of the things that really captured my attention. The way that you phrased it the last time we caught up is everyone in this webinar here knows that AI is not going anywhere. We all need to learn how to use it and to wield the power. Yet I liked your comment around most people view AI as a toy, something shiny, fun to play with, as opposed to a practical way of leveraging it. Instead of thinking AI as artificial intelligence, it's added intelligence. So just maybe if you could just take a step back and go through how you're using it to power what you're doing.
If you take a look, these are all chats. If I were to scroll down, if we go down to I started working with this in April. So like probably 90% of these chats are all me building stuff in SmartSuite, right? Set up post shortcuts, as my son wants to build a waterproof torpedo. just all sorts of stuff. All of these are all how to do lead creation via HTTP, podcast request summaries. Like there's reference fields in data for Nate. And these are all basically me using ChatGPT to figure out how to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And so here's just an example, right? Help me write an HTTP request that will send new message in Google Chat Space that we just created in Naten, right? Here's all the relevant API docs. And I'm literally just copying the API documents from Google or from SmartSuite or from whoever I'm trying to work with. And there's all the API documentation that I just copied and pasted large amounts of data into it because I don't know how to do any of this stuff. And it'll come back and be like, okay, here's what you need to do to send a request. You need to put in this, and here's how you put your authorization, and here's what you put in there. Here's how you configure your headers, right? It'll walk you through all that. And I'll be like, I'll get a message back that's, hey, I needed to add scopes. What scopes do I need? And it'll tell me what scopes I need to do. Where do I add the scopes in the credential? And it tells me where to add the scopes in the credential. So like when I tell you I don't know how to do this stuff, I literally don't know how to do this stuff. So I'm just having it tell me what to do and where to put it. And I wish I had organized these all, but you can see in some of them, I'm like, I don't even know how to do it. I just take a screenshot of what's in SmartSuite or what's in thing. I'm like, this is what I'm seeing. Can you tell me which field I need to fill in? And with the new vision capabilities that are in the ChatGPT, it'll be like, yeah, this data goes in this field. And it'll tell you what to do with all of it. And so when it comes up to the data structure that we're building, I was like, hey, let me explain to you what we're building and what I want to accomplish. And I need to have a database structure that'll let me do this. What are the things that you suggest? And it started teaching me how to build database structures. And with that teaching, I was able to figure out and realize, oh, now I know how to build database structures, and built really complicated database structures in here and linked everything together. And then once the top has popped on understanding, you're like, oh, now I get it. Now I can link everything together. Now you can start playing with it and really pushing the bounds of what's capable. So I don't know. It's like having a PhD teacher who knows everything and has infinite patience available for you to to just learn things.
It's so good. And the rudimentary way that most people are using AI is not that, but it can and should be that. Like the call to action for anyone using AI and how to get the most out of it is any kind of instructions or prompts you're given from a tool, feed that in. Like training ChatGPT, sure, there's some science to it, but it can be as simple as just pasting in things that you're
Yeah.
trying to understand and learn, and let it learn for you like that. Ask the questions of it. Like, I love your application of AI here. Could you actually, I like the story as well before you get into some additional use cases of how you prompted ChatGPT with our formula solution to help write a
Yeah,
formula.
that's one of my favorite things. So if you create a new workspace and go not create from scratch, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's do that again. Create from template. You guys have a formula operators and functions, which if you guys haven't installed this, take the second now, open up your SmartSuite thing and go and install this. It is one of the coolest features of SmartSuite that you have these formula features. And we'll get into a lot of things we're doing with it because probably half of the things that we're automating are using the formula functions because we can have webhooks, we can talk to external systems. All of it is because of the formula functions. And so this is that table installed. And I've read this a little bit, but honestly, it's boring, right? Like who wants to read any of this stuff? But it's all of the capabilities of your formula features. And here's what you do. You click the little button that selects everything, and then you move the zoom things out of the way. And there's an export button here, and you can export as CSV. And you can export the entirety of all of this goes through everything, right? The description of the functions, the valid inputs, technical usage, example usage, and what the outputs are. So all the information that the AI needs to be able to write you formulas is in here. You export that as a CSV, and then when you're in Google Chat, you just click the little pencil thing here, and you upload that CSV and be like, hey, here's the formulas and functions that I have available to me, and here's what I'm trying to accomplish. I want to write a formula that will do X, Y, Z. And then what I'll do from there is we'll come in to the show record and I'll export a show record, right? So I'll export a show record and so here's my record. Here's all the data that I have on it. Here's some other records that are linked to it that have data on it. And I'll export an example, one of those records, and I'll upload all of those into the chat and be like, I want a formula field that will do these things and pulls this data. Can you help me write it? And it'll write the formulas for what we're doing. And so I'll show you some examples of that just on some of these episodes. So let me get in and take a look at some of these show manager actions because it's really relevant for a couple of things. So one of them, this is just a really simple one, right? Open Squadcast session in Squadcast. And this is just a really simple formula, right? URL with Squadcast session ID opens up the session, right? It's just a button. And It's really simple. Really simple. What's the word that I'm looking for? The way that it's structured, right? There, you don't have to do much fancy things. But again, I know how to do this now. But when I first started working with Formula Editor, I didn't. I was like, how do I write a URL that I can put a field in, and it would write that for me and make it so I have a button that clicks and opens up our Squadcast session just because we have the ID, because the ID got passed in from the record there. But more complicated is things like this, right? So we come in. This one has a webhook that's talking to Nathan, to N8N, and it's running over this is basically the record ID, and we're pulling in our record ID for it. And then we're also pulling in the show record that's associated with this, and we're pulling in this particular record ID, and we're passing all of that over to Nathan. And then we have just a little simple comment thing here that's, hey, this is our test webhook, and this one's our production webhook. So I can keep both of them in the formula field at the same time. And then if I need to switch to test, I can just move the little comment tag from here to here, and the button will update to use the production or non-production version of the URL. So when I'm testing things, I can work on them. And again, I didn't know how to write any of this stuff. The formula field export let me do all of that. Does that answer that question?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love the button field as well. I think it's quite underutilized, and yet it can do a whole lot. Webhooks, I think, was something that you have
Yeah,
been.
so that's what I wanted to show next was some of the webhook capabilities, because I know that's one of your guys' most frequently asked like feature requests. And the reality is you guys have webhooks available already. And so what I want to do is do just a very brief education on what a webhook is. Again, this is all stuff that I know now because of building all this stuff out and doing this with ChatGPT. But there's two different types of webhooks. There's a lot more than that, but there's two that are relevant for what we're trying to do. There's a get webhooks and there's post webhooks. And a get webhook is when you are passing data in a URL. And so if I pop this open and you see the data we have is just, you have these what they call query parameters, the question, show record ID equals, and episode record ID equals. Those are our query parameters that you can pass via a get webhook, right? And so the get webhook, I can pass over to Nathan, and Nathan can use that data to do some other things. Most people, when they're requesting webhooks, is that what they want is they want post webhooks, are where you can include all of the data for something in the webhook and pass over a payload of data to something else. And you guys don't have those available yet. I know it's on your feature thing, but that's probably the thing that most people are looking at. And so what I did was just talk to ChatGPT about how can we fake it, right? How can we fake a post webhook? And so the way that you fake a post webhook is the wonderful API documentation that's over here and ChatGPT. You use a get webhook. And what you do with the get webhook, let me go back over and I'll show you on one of these other workflows where let's do our assign all tasks on here. We have a webhook that's a get webhook, and it pulls in the data. And then what we do with that data is we do a pull that pulls all the data that would have been sent in a post if you had post webhooks available. What we're doing there, let me leave without saving here. And let me do the get episode contact data from SmartSuite. This is a sub workflow. And I have this one workflow, which I can copy and send to everyone if you guys want to use any of this, but you can use this in any automation platform. It doesn't have to be innate. You can do this in Zapier. You can do this in Make. You could do this in Apple Shortcuts. I proved this the other day. I was playing around with Apple Shortcuts. I can pull all this data in Apple Shortcuts and do stuff with it. And I passed in the show record ID and I passed in the episode record ID. And since I passed those in, I can use the API to pull the show record. And the output of pulling the show record is every single field that's in the show record for that episode. And the episode record pulls in all of the data for the episode record, every single field for the episode record. And then because I pulled the show record, that's connected to the primary contact. So I pull the primary contact record that's associated, and I have all of that data. And then I just merge it all back together as a single piece of like data. And then I pass it back into whatever workflow I'm working on. Then I use this workflow over and over again in all of my other workflows. Anytime that I want to pass something in, you'll notice all the way through my SmartSuite, the only thing that ever changes is this little thing here, is which webhook I'm calling. But otherwise, I just pass in the record ID and the episode ID, and I use this little automation here to pull all the data that I want, that I might have sent anyways if I was going to send a post record. And so I'm using a get record to fake having a post record by having the first step in any of my automations pull all the data that you might have sent with a post record or a post webhook. Does that make sense? I know that's really high level, complicated stuff, but what it means essentially is I have all of the data that I need to act on available to me with just the click of a button in SmartSuite in my automation platform.
Yes, I think there's a lot of head nodding and folks that are wanting this action. If you haven't noticed at this point, this is an intermediate to advanced level session. Apologies to the folks that are just getting acquainted to SmartSuite, but hopefully this is showing you how high that ceiling truly is and what can be done. I'm sensing a general theme. If we could just shift a couple questions, and then I want to get
Yeah,
back
sure.
to some more of the goodness, Richard. General theme I'm sensing around your preparation or your, I don't know what you want to call it, prompting, priming, usage of these different tools. Obviously, there's a great quote that I once heard from a CEO of a former company, used to work at LinkedIn, and it's trust equals consistency over time, right?
Yeah.
In this case, you trust ChatGPT, you trust your outputs, not 100%, you're still kind of pressure testing things, but if the outcome delivers the result that you want, there you go. And
We
you
move
go
it to
back and
production.
so there's a theme here, and I'll just drop a few of them, and maybe you can tie an answer around some suggestions for folks to get more comfortable and acquainted to this. How to ask a code creation in ChatGPT is critical. You get different results. What's the best way to suggest that you're ensuring an accurate, appropriate code creation using ChatGPT?
I think the technical term for it is cowboy coding. If you talk to someone who's an actual coder, they'd be like, "You're doing cowboy coding." I am absolutely doing cowboy coding. And the any actual developers here would be like, "That's crazy." But you have to think like what we're actually doing here is we're doing very small things. We're doing things like I need a button that does this. And I'm not building entire applications. You guys already built the application. So I don't need to do anything that's mission critical here. Most of the code that I'm working on is little things like this where you write it and you put it in there and then it doesn't work and it doesn't work. And so just as an example, in the modify these URL fields, if I go in and I put something in here that's just, I don't know, an equals sign, it pops up an error, invalid syntax. And I'll just copy my code and I'll copy the error thing in there and be like, what's wrong with it? What's the syntax error? And it'll tell me. And sometimes it's wrong. And I'll be like, nope, that wasn't it. What else could it be? And go through and do those things. And sometimes you can put in, I wish I could just pull out of my head some of the error examples that you get, but sometimes you'll pull in a record and in here and you'll get like a really long error code, and the error code will be like, you can't use this type of field as the second parameter of a formula field because of this reason or whatever, and like that whole error will be in there. I'll just copy and paste that whole error with my formula and the whole thing, and they're like, apparently I can't do that. What are some alternate ways that we can go about this? And it'll go through and tell you what to do with it. Same kind of thing you'll see in a lot of the automations. I don't have any code things in that automation, but the code is the same way, right? Whenever I'm processing a bit of code, I'm like, hey, I need to modify the data this way. And I'll run the code and be like, that didn't output the way I wanted. Here's how it outputted. Can we modify the code so it does output the way that I want? And you just go back and forth until you get the output that you're looking for. And for a lot of the really simple stuff that we're doing here, because almost all of this kind of stuff is just data manipulation, right? We're working with data inside of a database, and I don't need to worry about authentication. I don't need to worry about people trying to inject things into my code. I don't have to worry about like code safety. All I'm doing here is I've got this input and I want this output. Can you help me make those kind of changes? And I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how I'm doing it.
Yeah, I think it does. And there's a few other comments that are dropped in here, which I appreciate. Like Andrea saying, continuously refining the questions with ChatGPT. I know you do a lot of that, which is it's not quite giving you what you want, just understanding where it's missing the mark, saying that implicitly and allowing ChatGPT to come back with another iteration. There's a question here around automations being very powerful, being complex. So the question here, the crux is, how do you go about mapping out things like automations or how you want things to move before you actually go and do it and build it? Do you have a planning process that you recommend?
Yeah. So my planning process is break shit. And you will get further by playing with the tools and seeing what it does than trying to plan something out, because whatever you plan is not going to work. Ask me how I know. So what my recommendation is, be like, I want to accomplish something. Can I automate this process? And then build an automation that you think will work. And then when you get through it, you'll realize that didn't do what I wanted to do. So do it again. So one of the things that's interesting is I showed you this workflow for the new episode recording. This is probably the 8th iteration of this until we got it to do what I wanted. And there's a bunch of deleted workflows. And I'm like, nope, that didn't come out the way that I wanted to. So I come back in and try it again in a different way and structure them. And then I started realizing like, oh, if I have them as separate pieces, I can call a specific thing like that sub workflow to create the episode folders as a separate workflow. Now has 3 different inputs where I can execute the node because a new episode came in, or I can click one of the buttons, or I can click just the subfolders button. And so like my team now has all these options to just click a button and create all the folders they need in Google Drive, which is super fun, but like iterative, right? You realize what you can do, and the more you play with it, the more you'll understand the system, and the better you understand the systems, the more complex things you can build. And so my suggestion is just is break it. And again, we're not doing anything mission critical here. You already have your systems and processes. You're looking at how do I make it better? Create a duplicate table of your stuff, right? Outside of what your staff is working on, and see if you can automate one of their processes. And so it's not mission critical until you turn it on. And once you've played with it enough, and then what I'll do is we'll have a duplicate table with some episodes in it, and I'll have our team leads go through and be like, hey, run an episode through this process, see if you run into any issues. And they're like, nope, it all worked. Sweet. Now we can move it into production on there and delete the tables. And now we've got working things on there. I don't know if that makes sense, but we're just making it happen.
Yeah, it absolutely does. There's a lot of support for your cowboy coding, call it what you like in the chat. I think Blessing said, no, own it. Absolutely. And Richard, you and I are so aligned in the sense that you have this eye for optimization and automation. When it comes to things that need to be done repetitively, continuously, there's no glory in doing that. Like I share this with customers all the time. There's no glory in doing the same things over and over when you can go and push yourself to find those automations. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't.
Let me give you a math problem too that helps make this useful. So as an example, this button here, move recordings from Squadcast to Google Drive. I have someone on staff, her name's Maria, she's fantastic, that every day goes into all of our clients' show records, all their shows on Squadcast, and checks for all the new recordings. And when she finds them, she downloads them onto a server we have in the cloud because it got really fast internet. She moves them over to Google Drive, uploads them to Google Drive, puts the Google Drive folder link inside of our record, and then takes the files, moves them into Descript, and takes the Descript file and puts that onto our show record, right? So for me, this button here represents probably 180 hours of my own work. And if you say I make $100 an hour or whatever to do all of this stuff, this is $2,000-$3,000 worth of my own labor to build a button that does one thing, that moves those things over. I pay Maria's payroll to do that work, pays for the creation of that automation in about 2 weeks. Right. And so when you're looking at these kind of things, when you're looking at how can I make my processes better, and then it's one of the things I look at, like how when you're looking at automations and artificial intelligence, I think a lot of people look at them as how do I replace human labor instead of how do I enhance human labor. And so that's the way we always look at it, is how do I make it so that my team is doing stuff that only they can do, right? If a robot can do it, why would I pay a human being to do it when I can pay a human being to do things that are more creative? And now Maria is moving more of her time into stuff that is human driven, right? Stuff that communications with customers and other things that are significantly better when a human does them, and those kind of things. And so we're opening up those opportunities. So this stuff pays for itself. It's worth your time to put those things in.
I absolutely love it. I love it. A few very specific ones here. So Carlos is asking, there are a lot of thumbs up when you mention the SOP, like what you're showing right there. Could you just open that description, kind of show how you're dropping those in?
These SOPs? Yeah. So if we go edit description, it gives you a little description field, and you can literally copy something here, and there's a link button, and you just add a link. And so if you look at all the records, they have a little link copied button, and you copy the link from the SOP record and paste it in, and it's ready to go. That's all there is to it. So super simple. And then so one of my core philosophies is that your project management system should be able to train a new staff member from the assignment of the task. So if I assign a task to someone, they should be able to get that task in their My Work thing, click on it, and have the instructions available to them directly in there. And so that means I can hire someone off the street, assuming they have the requisite skills. They can read English and they can click the buttons and do the things that they need to do. I don't need a human being to train them, right? If they can read and use critical thinking skills, which is what we hire for anyways, my project management system can train them how to do the work that they need to do. And so that's one of the philosophies there. And you can see we're not done, right? I only have SOPs through half of them. These ones don't have all the SOPs on there, right? It's actively on my to-do list. If I were to share my other screen here, it says Richard's to-dos today, and one of them is continue SmartSuite documentation. I want to take a couple of seconds and show you some of the buttons that are in here and some of the things that they do, because I think it hits on some of the other features that people think they want in SmartSuite that they already have. And so one of them is the template tasks. And you guys don't have template tasks anywhere, but you have an incredibly flexible database system where you can build template tasks. So let me show you this. So we have episode tasks and data, and you'll see here this episode has no tasks on it. And you know what? Let me associate this fake episode that I put together here with a show. So I'm going to go into show manager, or not show manager actions, info here, and we're going to associate it with the show so it pulls in the right things, and we'll associate it with the hero show because my staff will know I'm testing things over here. And we'll just put a big testing thing on here so they know when they see it in their work inbox that they don't need to do anything with it. And then I'm going to put in the episode number as well. So we're going to put in episode 500. So it's just way off of the world. And then Zoom is again in my way. If you guys haven't seen this before, there's a little caret. You can save and continue. It's my favorite shortcut key is the save and continue or the save and move to next episode. So if you ever need to update a bunch of data, like this Command plus S or Command plus R is really useful. And so it'll tell you episode saved when you use the Command S key. So that just saved that data to the database. And so what I want to do is I want to assign all of the data, assign all the tasks. And so I've got a couple of different task lists here. I have a standard processing speed and an expedited processing speed. I'll show you the database tables that are making this happen in just a minute. But standard processing speed, send data to Nathan. It'll say magic assignment bot activated. You may close this tab. And when we come back, the episode tasks and data I may not have associated all the right records for it, but it'll automatically it'll put all of the right things on there. I tried to do this with a sample episode and it's probably not going to work because I didn't put all the right data in it. But what it'll do is it'll write all of the episode tasks on there. And the episode tasks will be assigned to the correct person, and they'll have due dates that are. Oh, that's probably what I didn't do. I didn't put due dates on there. It'll do offsets from whatever the due date is, and then each one of the tasks again has an SOP associated with it. So if they click the link, that particular task has an SOP. Okay, here's your checklist, and here's what you should do to accomplish that thing, right? Whatever it is for that episode. And so the way that we're making that happen is two things. So let me exit without saving, so I'm not messing that up. And we have got a hidden table over here called task control lists. And so the task control list, we have a standard operating speed on here. And so there's our episode task list, standard operating speed, and we have our checklist. And the checklist has just a little code, and the code is, we're using the code in Nathan to associate the right things. And so SMT is show manager tasks, FMT is file manager tasks, SQT is our Scribbler squad tasks, that's our writers. The GTD is the graphic design tasks, post-production tasks, and show manager tasks. And this has offsets. And so it's the due date offset. So if the due date is today, then the offset's going to be -7 days for any of the tasks that are listed as SMT. File manager tasks offset -6 for file manager, offsets all the way through. And so we have the standard speed, and then the only thing that's different with the expedited speed is the offsets are a little bit different. But I can actually go through and create multiple different task list sets. So right now we haven't come up with any like repetitive tasks that we might want to template more often, but I can add as many task list sets as I want here. And then what we're doing with them is in the episodes record, we go back over to our tasks and data or show manager actions. So the show manager this is just a drop down. And the dropdown has standard processing speed, expedited processing speed. These are all just associated with the records. I can add as many as I want. So if I had 15 of these task templates, as long as I describe them well, so our show manager know what to do with them, they can select a set of tasks and then assign them. And we're using our bot over here to, let me see, assign all episode tasks. And here's what it's doing, right? It's same webhook, and it's using that sub workflow to grab the episode record, to grab the show record, to grab the whatever things that it wants. And then it's using a little switch. Okay, was it standard speed or expedited speed? And so it's actually pulling in the API number for that speed. And you can actually see that in our task control list. You come down here and it'll show you the checklist IDs. I don't remember which one it is, but it gives you the numbers that we have it associated with. Hey, this is the one that goes with standard speed, and this is the one that goes with expedited speed. It was just right in the API thing. And so it's doing a check on which one was selected, and then it's grabbing the task list, again, using the API to grab that task list. So it's grabbing the ID of that task list, and it's putting all that together. And then it's using, again, this is code that ChatGPT wrote, where it's matching all the things. There's all those SMT, FMT codes, and there's the number of days offset. And then it's grabbing all the process task stuff, returning all of that, so it's ready to go. We set all the fields, this field ID that we want to update for it, and then we pass that all back into SmartSuite, again using a more complicated platform. And now we have a automated task assignment bot that will make it so our staff can use a templated selection and update things in there. So that one's a really cool way to do task templates. And so that's one way. And then the other way, that's like more of a record specific task list. The other way that we're doing that is for our podcast launches. So for new clients, if you have a project based setting here, these are all individual records on tasks when we launch a new show. And so we've got a template task folder that has all of the different tasks that we want to have done. And then each of these tasks has like the checklist that's associated with them. And so we're in the process now of copying all of our SOPs over to these tasks for our launch, because the launch is more of a project-based thing instead of a recurring thing. So there's a bunch of really detailed tasks records on here. And whenever we are ready to take on a new show, I can take the entire thing and just use the duplicate record field, and it'll duplicate the entire set of records. And what it's going to do, you see all these records are in here, they'll start to move out because we have an automation. And the automation basically just says, I believe this one, if the record is created today, then clear the value for the linked show. And so we cleared the value for the linked show. And what it does is it'll move all of these. I'm not sure why the automation isn't kicking off here, but it'll remove the testing testers. And there we go. It's starting to go. And it'll pull them over onto this side. And now there's no show record assigned to them. And so we can take the whole thing and link them all to a new show record. And what that'll do is it'll create a view like this. So this is one of our clients that we're launching right now. And so I just create a new view for that show, and the filter up at the top, which I think I locked it, so I can't display toolbar. How do I? Oh yeah, I don't know how to unlock it. There's a unlock view, private, unlock view. Either way, you can change the filters to just be that particular show. And so now whenever we have a new show come on, our onboarding manager knows, duplicate the task list, the automation will automatically move all these things over, and then I can just associate it with a new show and make a view for that show. And now we have a project list that's coming from a templated task set as well. So there's two different ways to do templated task lists for either project-based or individual record-based task things. And again, that's all stuff that's just native functionality to SmartSuite if you learn how to use their records appropriately.
Again, wow, Richard. For those that joined maybe a few minutes late from the kickoff, I want to call out that Richard's been using SmartSuite for about 20 days, just to put things in perspective, just so you don't think this is like where you can get to in SmartSuite in many years of using it. This is really just about pushing the bounds of what you need and what you want and looking for ways to optimize, which you've done brilliantly. We're also a few minutes over time. Feel free to drop off, of course, if you need to, folks. We will send out this recording afterwards. There's clearly a need for another follow-up session to see, like, where does Richard go in 40 days, 60 days? So stay tuned for 2.0. I'm sure that people would appreciate that as well. There are a number of questions left, but maybe just one. I know there's so much more that you could share. This is 10 to 20%.
This is only a little bit of what we've built. And we have automations that automatically write. So like one of the things that I would love to show at some point, we can do this on another episode, but we have our written asset data, and there's a magic generator button here that will automatically write blog posts, short description, show notes, episode titles. And you can see I literally just click a button and say, I want to write a short description, or not a short description. That's what I already wrote. Let me do the show notes for this episode. And you save the record, and I'll just let this go. But in 30 seconds or so, it'll come back with show notes written for this. And what that's doing, it's actually pulling from a prompt database. And so we have a prompt database with all of our prompts in it. And it's pulling the prompts in from our thing. So our team has access to the prompt database, so they can make adjustments on those prompts and do other things with them. And I don't remember which record I was looking at, but it'll write the show notes automatically and come back for it. So I can show how we're doing some of those things. We have automations that are automatically creating all of our derivative content. And so whenever our show manager is ready to create derivative content, she can create the linked assets and create all of the derivative content pieces. And these derivative content records for every episode, same kind of thing. There's the composition stuff. They click a little button on here. What do they want to generate all the things, and it'll write the title, the social media post, the first comments for it, and allow us to move those things directly into our social media management platform. We've got some plans now where we're going to be making it so that, like, when an episode is done, our post-production team can click a button and move it to YouTube, click a button, move it to Captivate, click a button and schedule things on social media. So we're going to basically move our entire process to be done directly in SmartSuite. We even have it set to one of the future Richard's build out. We have like you saw the Google Drive folder fields are on all the records. And so that one of the things we do with all our clients is we have a new episodes folder and a published episodes folder in their Google Drive. And right now, when we're done, we have to manually move those over. We're going to set it up so that because we have all the data, when someone marks the episode as done, it'll automatically move the entire episode into the published episodes folder for them in their backup on Google Drive. And so there's just a tremendous amount of things that we can do if you build everything correctly.
I'm mindful that we're cutting into your decompressed time. I think I see up top there you have 10 minutes left, which is a beautiful counterbalance to all the kind of energy that you're bringing into what you're building and creating here. Do you have a few extra moments just for some other?
I have the whole rest of the day. So whatever questions you got.
Okay, you hear that? We're doing a day-long session here with Richard, folks. If you can stay tuned. No, yeah, a couple ones that have come up as common themes, and then let's land the plane together. One question is around ensuring secure coding practices. Like when you use ChatGPT, just how are you mindful of that in your usage?
Again, I'm not the kind of code that we're writing is really simple stuff. It's I want to take this data and modify it in this way. So input data, modify the data, output data. There's not really any security risks with that code unless someone, I don't even know what they do. They can get into my automation platform maybe and see that I'm changing the due dates from one to the other. I don't know that I would write code I wouldn't write SmartSuite with ChatGPT, right? But I can modify the due date from whatever the due date is to offset it by 7 days. Like so I'm not particularly worried about secure coding practices because I'm not building applications. I'm just doing data modification. Like it's really simple JavaScript type stuff. And yeah, that's the only thing that we're like all the language stuff is just JavaScript, and all the things that we're doing is all just data manipulation. And it's single instance. We're manipulating this piece of data one time and moving it on to the next field in an automation. So we're not building applications, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Question here around, do you actually have an IT background or you just have the curiosity to leverage tools and learning them as you go?
So I am a super nerd, but that is, if that wasn't obvious, my background is actually as a preacher. I got my degree in preaching, and so persuasive education, that kind of stuff is really where my skill is. But what I guess gives me the ability to do all of this is I'm not afraid to break it. Right. I'm not afraid. I realize that like as long as you're not doing it inside of your production environments, where the stuff, all your mission critical stuff is for your team, you can break things. Like the computer's not going to explode and melt down in front of you because you put the wrong code in the Natan code field or the Zapier code field, right? Like it's not the end of the world if something doesn't work. So you just play with it until you get where you want to go. And yeah, my background, I think one of the things that's useful to me is I see the world in terms of triggers and actions. It's the way I see things. So it makes it easy to build this kind of stuff.
That's excellent. I've seen a couple of requests here for, are you familiar with our data schema widget? Have you come across that in utilities and dashboards?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's pop this open because this will be really entertaining. A couple
I
people
got a dashboard. I got a dashboard ready to play with in here.
Let's open it up. This is going to be like a beautiful spider's web. If you go to utilities at the bottom there, or just
utilities.
Yeah, either one. Cool.
Data schema.
Go ahead and install that.
Ooh.
It'll do the work for you. And it'll map out. And so you can select. So here you'll see all of your solutions mapped. You'll see the links, the tables. You'll see the data within those.
Apparently, it won't let me make it bigger. That's all right.
See if you can just open that. If you expand this here.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, cool. Into some of these, yeah. So you can start to see all the linked records across these. There's different ways to see all the fields as well in the settings, but who was specifically asking for this? I think it was Rusty. Just wanted to see, no elaborate explanations needed. Just wanted a quick glance to look at your schema as a whole. But
I haven't even seen this. Holy cow. Oh yeah, there's some other things that are useful too. I have all of my employees in a database record, and now when a task has gone from done to complete, we have a task payment thing that's making, because we do a paper task stuff where it's automatically creating paper task invoices when something is completed. And that's all pulling from a database record from their profiles and what they're getting paid on a per task basis for things, so that our staff can scale with our workload. And that's something that we couldn't do before, but we can do now because of SmartSuite and the automations that are in there. So where was I at?
Some fun with that data schema widget. And in the settings, you can open up to see certain connectivity. You can look between just certain solutions. So there's some other stuff you can do with it here.
Oh, that's really cool.
If you click display format all fields, this is going to be wild, but if you open this up, yeah. So all fields created. You have to zoom out a ton with everything you've built, but
holy cow. Well, there you go. If you were wondering what I built in SmartSuite.
Yeah, 20 days of building gets you this, folks.
Yeah, I didn't know that was in there. Holy cow.
Yeah. Some people really go back and they'll go back to the schema, they'll look at the mappings and they'll go back and build and they'll go back and forth between the two. So this is just a nice little extra way to visualize.
Yeah, so you can see all sorts of things, everything from our automation tracker. So every automation that we've written, by the way, there's an automation record. And so if we go back into our automation tracker over here and like the new episode recording one, it's got linked to the Nathan workflow, the triggering workflow, and overview components, how it all works, maintenance and adjustments on that particular thing. And all of this was written by ChatGPT. And then inside the actual workflows, I don't have these done on every single piece, but there's an option in Nathan to put notes on there. And so they'll have, once they're all done, like when something is in production, we go through and we write all the notes on the thing. If I could impress anything on you, you're going to build stuff. And when you build complicated things like what we're doing here, the more documentation, the better. So document everything.
Amen to that. It's such an overlooked component of the building and creating is documenting it out and being able to explain it and share it with your colleagues. So if they want to understand the root of why something is built a certain way or working in a certain way. Let's land the plane here. So Caitlin has a great question to bring us home. What was the moment when you were building where you realized just how this is going to impact your life and your business?
When I opened the solutions API documentation from SmartSuite, that was a world-changing moment for me because I have always wanted to be able to build with the APIs, and most APIs are like, let me see if I can say this correctly. Almost every other system on the planet that has a public API has documentation for it. Most of them are fairly decent. SmartSuite's API documentation is worlds better. I want somehow, if you could take what you're doing with your solutions API and force every other company in the world that has an API to build the same thing, that would be like the best gift you could give the world. And the reason I say that is because it was the first time that I was able to see and understand how what I was building affected the API, right? It affected what was happening in the API. And that by itself allowed me to understand the other system's API documentation better. Does that make sense? Your API documentation made it so I could do things with Google's API that I've never been able to accomplish before because I finally understood how they worked together, right? How the data structure that I'm looking at impacts what the API is doing. And it was your API documentation that helped me see that, and running it through ChatGPT several times and playing with things and building stuff with it. I was like, oh, it unlocked so much understanding for how to work with an API that now I'm now to the point where over the course of the past couple of days, I'm like, I can take this automation and I can build this automation in Nathan. I can build this automation in Zapier. I can build this automation in Make. I can build this automation in shortcuts on my iOS. And I can build this with Nathan or with SmartSuite. I could build the same kind of thing in ClickUp or Asana or Collections, which is a database application on iOS, right? I was like, once you really understand what's happening in the background, you realize that the tools are, it's not that they're irrelevant because they're not, right? There's certainly better tools than others, but for the most part, if you understand data goes into a database, automations to work with the data in the database, and intelligence allows you to move things around and figure out what to do with them. Like those three things give you just a world of opportunities. And like one of the things that's really nice about SmartSuite is SmartSuite just they didn't build something that was like, we're trying to accomplish a specific task, right? Like they built you a free open playground to do whatever you want with. And I think that is both beautiful and difficult, particularly if you're a newcomer, right? Because you have to look at it and be like, okay, what could I build? Because you can build anything. You're just like, here's a whole huge box of Lego blocks, and you can, if you look at me, what I would build with Lego blocks is put a couple of squares and make a rectangle, which is probably what a lot of people do. And then someone who's really good with Legos comes out and builds a transformer, right? That you can do both things with it. And so having that it was that solution API that really changed it for me.
That's excellent. Calling out to Richard, and I know you don't want me to plug this, but I will. I highly suggest you reach out to Richard and get time with him, whether that's just hearing what he's working on, getting some opinions on how to build, potentially having him and his services now that he's able to scale this out to additional offerings. Any sort of business can benefit from something like this. If you just want to drop your email address in there.
I did want to let everyone know I built a whole thing. Every single automation that we're building inside of SmartSuite, I'm starting to write newsletters about on pushbuttonnation.com. And so there'll be a free newsletter And we have a paid option as for it as well, where I'm going to include all the downloads. So if you want to get all the downloads to just install them, but we'll at least go over how we're building them and the structures for them and everything on the free newsletter. So I think that'd be a useful for anyone who wants to just see all of this. The first issue is almost done. I'll be done with this afternoon. And since in my case, I'm building all these automations anyways, and I'm documenting them all anyways for my team, I figured I might as well make a publicly accessible version of all of that stuff. And I said, this is just a, yeah, I got a lot of stuff that we're building. And so we're going to put out a newsletter issue for probably every single automation and workflow process that we have on there. And so that's on there. And then if you want to get a hold of me, my website is richardmatthews.me. There's a contact form on there. You can get a hold of me there. You can reach out to me on, I think it's got my Facebook Messenger links and other things that are on there. Happy to talk with anyone and show you what we're up to. And of course, if you want to run a podcast, you can always reach out and talk to us about that. We do a good job with that work, as you can see on the back end here.
It's impressive, top to bottom. Thank you for sharing your story, for sharing everything you're working on. Go ahead.
I want to talk about something that just really quickly that I think is useful for people who are trying to build big companies. So we're trying to get to the point where we can use acquisition as a way to grow our things. And part of the holdback for us on really rapid growth was like, how do we take on, if we buy another business, how can we take and integrate 50 new shows at one time by buying the entire customer thing? And that comes down to having an operation system on the back that can handle scale. And with our previous system, again, won't mention names, I couldn't build that kind of scale in, right? Because our labor costs were scaling directly with our customer acquisition. Right. And so if your labor costs scale linearly with customer acquisition, you're never getting economies of scale. And what we're doing here, what we've built out in this side is as we continue to add new clients, I can show you this. I actually have a whole, maybe in the future we can go over this, but I have a whole profit first database that's going over. And you can actually see as I add more shows, our labor cost as a percentage of revenue is dropping. Right. And that gets to the point where we get to 50 or 60 shows under management and our profit margins start to become very exciting because we have systems on the back end that are allowing us to take advantage of the economies of scale. And economies of scale only are available to you if you build good operations, right? I know Tim Cook is famous for making Apple really profitable because of operations. SmartSuite is an operations powerhouse. And if you build this kind of stuff in, you can have that kind of same stuff for your business. And I know it was one of the things that I started chatting with some of my business mentors. And I was like, man, if we actually get all these systems in place and documented, our next 40 or 50 shows that we bring on give us the ability to have the financial wherewithal to be like, I can just buy all of my competitors and know that I can outserve the market because of what's on the backside. And we can go from 50 to 100 or 100 to 200 shows and not have it impact what we're doing because our hiring system is all in here. And all the records train our staff. So I can hire 15 staff tomorrow and have one person train them all because it's like, hey, log in, whatever's assigned to you, the documentation's all there. I can scale staff, I can scale clients, I can scale everything because we have a really good operation system on the back end. So I think it's useful to think about when you're building this stuff out is what it can actually do for your business.
Absolutely. Yeah. And good luck competing with people that are building the operations in the way that you are. Again, thank you. I appreciate everyone that stayed. Still quite a strong contingent sticking with us. Obviously speaks to the value.
Yeah, I'm happy to, if people want to just pepper questions, I'm happy to stay as long as you want to stay.
Awesome. It looks like a couple in here. So Joseph is asking, can you show how you call that sub workflow in Nathan, the get to post webhook?
Let me do the screen share again. And maybe I should just leave the screen share up while we answer these questions. So let me go share screen and this one and share. Oh, I didn't even share the Writers Hub. We'll have to come back on and do one for the Writers Hub. The Writers Hub thing is so cool.
Where you have an idea and it goes and creates. Yes, that one's awesome.
So,
okay, the next
so
one.
Cool. On any of your workflows. And again, you can do the same kind of thing on any automation platforms. So this is not a Nathan specific feature. But what I did was in Nathan, they have a workflow trigger. And that's probably not the right one. It's a workflow one. And you basically just put in the ID of the other workflow and it runs the sub workflow for it. And so you just put in the other workflow's ID and the ID is at the top. And so there's a little ID for the workflow. And essentially what I did with it, let me leave without saving and go to that. I think it's actually called sub workflow. Get episode shows, tasks, and data. It's just pulling all of the data. That's all it does is it just pulls the show record, pulls the primary contact, pulls the episode record, whatever I need to pass, then merges it all together as a single thing and passes it back in. So anytime I need to get all the data, I don't have to rewrite this structure in that new workflow. I just call this one and it grabs all the data and passes it back in a common format. So all of my other workflows that need to pull data, they just start off with the trigger and then they pull the same, and that makes it so I have the same trigger data every single time. So every workflow where I need to work on the records has the same formula field. And then the only thing that changes in the formula field is which webhook I'm calling. And the webhook just determines which workflow gets started. But they all pull this same sub workflow to grab all the data. And that way I don't have to decide on a record by record basis which data I'm going to call, because all of it's going to get called every single time because of this sub workflow. And then I can just decide in the workflow which stuff I actually need to modify or work with. Hopefully that answers that question.
I think it does. Yeah. I see Joseph commenting there. What else, folks? Other questions you have while we have Richard here?
It did. I had a brain blast from that. I'm glad, Joseph.
Excellent. Yeah, we could.
Please come back for part 2. Happy to come back for part 2 or 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, looks like Joseph's teeing up another question. Question here: how do you incorporate a company while living in an RV? It's a fun question.
How do you incorporate a company? So, a couple of things. You have to have really good internet. So we've got $1,500 worth of internet connection equipment, right? We've got commercial routers and commercial Wi-Fi signal boosters and Starlink and all that kind of stuff. So that's useful. The other one is ripped apart the RV down to the studs back in the back room and rebuilt a whole desk. I've got a whole podcast studio desk set up here. I've got a couple of monitors, whole thing. I've got a top-down camera up there at the top. So I've actually built like an office in the back that makes it comfortable to work. So internet, comfortable working space, and then it's building a remote work environment, which I know is pretty common nowadays, but it wasn't when we started. And so being comfortable with being able to work on Zoom, having a good communication system. So we use Google Chat Spaces because we're already paying for Google Workspace. I know Slack is also really useful. We've tried Twist. We've tried a few of the other ones. The best one for us has been Google Chat, but I think that's just a culture thing, whatever your team is using, having a good communication system. And then my favorite thing is a little service called Kumo Space. So Kumo, Kumo Space it's similar to Zoom, but it's like a digital office. And then we all get instead of having an avatar, you have a little square of your video feed and you can move around to the office and we can meet in there. We have our conference meetings in there. Every one of my staff members has their own little decorated office. And when they want to meet with a client or meet with each other, they meet in that virtual space, which I think it's just more fun than Zoom. And so we have those, and that allows us to have a good virtual workspace.
Very cool. Very cool. I wanted to drop the folks that are still here due to Richard's, let's say, opening our eyes as to how GPT could be used, or ChatGPT or AI in general. We have a working prototype, and soon we'll be releasing to product in the formula builder. We're going to have an AI component that allows you to do a few things. Yeah, this has not been released at all yet. This is a little reward for staying this late. We'll do a few things, including giving you real-time assistance on how to write your formulas. It will help you to troubleshoot formulas. So instead of just saying invalid syntax or whatever it may be, it will give you real recommendations on how to fix it. And will also help you to understand and create documentation around those formulas. So you can take something that perhaps a colleague built or someone left, and you want to break down what it actually means that they created. It'll be able to deliver explanations of that. So
That's wonderful.
Yeah, coming soon to SmartSuite near you. We're excited about that one because the extension obviously then goes into other components of SmartSuite, AI around automation building and just assistance in other parts of the tool. I love that Richard has the ingenuity to go and dump it into ChatGPT and do it that way. And it's just made us realize like, hey, we need to make this easier for all of you to bring it into SmartSuite, making it more native.
There we go. So did I have some sort of impact on that feature being created?
You absolutely have. No, you have. We've released a couple things for you already just based on your feedback. Yeah. I appreciate that. Appreciate that very much.
So I got a long one from Joseph. Can you talk a bit more in detail about how to use GPT if you haven't done that type of prompting before? Use some creative uses, but never a question answer for learning. Even if you can give me some insights in the first step, I can take from there. What I'm doing generally, Joseph, is I have an outcome that I'm looking for, right? I don't go to ChatGPT until I have an outcome that I want, right? And so when you know what you want to accomplish, you can start with, I want to accomplish this. And so it's here's what I want to accomplish. And then the second part is here's the resources that I have access to in order to accomplish that goal. Right. And so resources that you have to accomplish it is like, hey, here's what I want to do. I want with my show record, I want to be able to do an assignment right on here, and here's what my resources are. I have this table, I have this table, I have this other table. I'm using SmartSuite. Here's what SmartSuite's capabilities are that I'm aware of, and here is I'm using N8N as our automation platform. What are some ideas you have on how I can accomplish this outcome? And what it's going to do is it's going to give you a bunch of ideas, and some of those ideas will be great and some of them will be terrible, and you won't know until you test them out. And then you'll run it through and be like, okay, explain to me how to do that thing, and you go through and it'll explain to you how to do it so that you implement. Right, you are it's hands and fingers and you do the things, and then you see what the outcome is, and the outcome either is close to what you want, or it's way off from what you want, or it's spot on. And whatever happens, you just tell it, be like, okay, this isn't quite what I wanted, right? This is, and you just go back and forth with it until you get what you want. And so knowing what your outcome is, knowing what your resources are, and then the other thing that you can do is you can tell it what your understandings are. Like, I understand how to do XYZ, or I don't understand how to do XYZ. So like when I first started, I'd be like, I don't know what the difference is between a get webhook and a post webhook is. Right? Can you explain that to me? Now it doesn't do that anymore because I know and I tell it, but I'm going to use a get webhook to do this thing, right? So it doesn't even explain it. Just, okay, here's what you do, right? So depending on what your knowledge level is, just tell it. And if it uses jargon that you don't understand, tell it, I don't understand that. Tell me, explain that to me, like a fifth grader, and it will. And yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. Excellent, excellent. Okay. Anything else? This is clearly not going to be the last session, Richard, as you continue to innovate. Everyone is now looking forward to part 2. I've got a few private messages on that too.
Awesome.
Great. All right. Let's wind it down. Thanks again. 90 minutes of magic. You are continuing to push the bounds and not only bringing new things into SmartSuite, but hopefully giving people a different way to think about the power of SmartSuite. And also, while much of this perhaps seemed complex, the simplicity in just using tools like ChatGPT to get in and do some of the work for you when you don't know. So I love it. I
Yeah.
love the honesty, and what you're building here is quite impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And on the flip side, having a tool available that allows us to do that is really, it's profitable, right? So thank you on the same token. I like what you guys are building. I'm excited to share more of it with people. We'll be talking a lot about SmartSuite in the newsletter we're putting together at Push Button Nations. Yeah, it's very cool. I love what you guys are building, and I love the feedback that you guys like. I give you feedback, and then you're like, "Yeah, we fixed that for you." Sweet. You know how many companies do that? None. Not none, but very few.
We'd love to hear it. No, we listen. We truly listen. Joseph, yes, recording will be posted here, and we'll be pushing through to folks as soon as it's processed. And get time with this guy, everyone that's still here. Get time with Richard, a peek into his mind, and can help out you, your goals personally and professionally with your business in a matter of minutes. So go and book the time. Thanks again. Looking forward to the next session.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, y'all. Enjoy the day.